Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM. The Fan out here at Blaine's Farm and Fleet in Oak Creek, right there on Rawson Avenue, day 4 as we record here Thursday evening at about 5 p.m. or so Central Daylight Standard Time. Last day of the Joy Drive comes up on Friday, December 1st here, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'll be out here. Your last opportunity to donate toys and cash donations for Children's Wisconsin and Robin's Nest, helping out the kids at the holidays. You can also go online if you want, donate online at 1250amthefan.com. That also welcome to, again, 1250amman.com. Everybody out here. It's toy and cash missions coming up on Friday. See Sparky Fifer here. You can follow me at Sparky Radio. Nathan Marzion there. You can follow him on Twitter at Nathan Marzion. And we'll talk about this Bucks and they're advancing in the NBA in-season tournament. And look, I don't know if I was necessarily sold one way or the other on this thing coming in. But for me, as you look at this and how this whole thing's set up, and we'll kind of go over the bracket, the Bucks get the Knicks, and then they play the winner of the Pacers and Celtics, depending on what happens in that game. So first off, the quarterfinal, Bucks and Knicks, that's where it all starts. Marzion, I like the Bucks' chances, I guess, going into this thing against the Knicks for the quarterfinals. And then Celtics and Pacers, we'll get to that matchup in a second. What do you think about Bucks Knicks in the quarterfinals?
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting game, and we already faced the Knicks once this year. They are a really good defensive team, and we're the opposite, the good offensive team. So it's kind of an interesting matchup that way. I do like our chances. I think we are better than the Knicks. I think we have multiple players that are better than the Knicks' best player. So I think that is a huge advantage for us. So I do expect us to win that. And you get to either Pacers or Celtics, who both I think are tough matchups for us in that next round, because the Pacers have such a good offense, which is difficult for a team that's struggling defensively right now. It'll just be difficult to stop them. But at the same time, they had no answers for Giannis, so that would just probably be another really high scoring game. And that team also likes to just push the pace. They're younger, and those are just the teams that the Bucks kind of tend to struggle with. And obviously, the other one is Boston, who is the next best team in the NBA. So difficult matchup, of course, there. But it's fun. I like that it adds a couple extra fun games to your schedule if you're good enough to make it in, and gives you a couple extra tests against these teams. So definitely have nothing against the in-season tournament, and I think that it has been minorly successful. Like, it hasn't been anything crazy. I don't think it's been anything that has taken the league by storm or anything like that. But it's been fun, and then it's good to see the Bucks get in this thing, have a little incentive in these games to play a little harder. I think they'll be playing harder against the Knicks and Celtics or Pacers, whoever they end up playing in those games, than they would in other regular season games, because they know that money is on the line. And as Damian Lillard talked about, doing it for the guys at the end of the bench, trying to do this for the teammates that don't have as much money as those guys, and you're trying to get them a nice payday. So I think they have a little bit more incentive, and it should lead to better and more entertaining basketball.
It's interesting. We had Curtin Long earlier this week on Monday, and Bart Winkler joined me because Ryan Horvat is out sick. Still doesn't have a voice as of we record today on Thursday. And I was talking about out here at the Toy Drive, there's more Bucks gear than Packers gear, and Brewers gear and Badger gear. In fact, you could take the Packer gear, Badger gear, and Brewer gear, combine all of them together, and you still wouldn't have as many people as is wearing Bucks gear. And it's not like Nathan Marzion's age, right? We don't got a bunch of 20-somethings walking around out here. Out here in Oak Creek, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, it's a lot more elderly people that are walking around and coming in and out of this store. So you got people, in their 70s, 80s, whatever, and they're wearing a Bucks hat, they're wearing a Bucks sweatshirt, the whole deal. So the Bucks have really captured kind of everybody in this thing. And in fact, one lady today, I was like, okay. I said, did you become a fan because of Giannis? I want to know. And she looked at me, Nathan, it looks could have killed. And she went, please, I've been a Bucks fan way before Giannis, whatever. I was like, hey, I ain't trying to offend you. I'm just curious to see why all you people are wearing Bucks jerseys, Bucks stuff all of a sudden, when the last 17 years, I hardly ever saw anything Bucks related. So that's cool. And so I've had a lot of Bucks talk out here because people want to talk Bucks, which has been cool. And the overriding sentiment is, man, their defense is awful and blah, 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 like we talk about on the Green and Growing podcast. And my response is always the same. Okay, fine. But Damian Lillard and Giannis, yet again, in the last game, showed that when they decide they want to play in the fourth quarter, they can take over and win a basketball game. And this is something that when you get to this tournament style, and now you get to the quarterfinals, right? The intensity level maybe picks up a little bit, and Thibodeau will have his team all fired up for this thing. And then you're at home, which is good too because you play on Tuesday, so you're at home. You're going to know what happens in the first game, so you'll know if you're playing the Celtics or the Pacers because that game is Boston at Indiana. That's Monday night. And then you come back and you play on Tuesday. So it's going to be fun to see now that there's a little bit more pressure if they're feeling it. And it means a little something. And the other team is playing for something. Will Giannis and Lillard be able to take over down the stretch against this Knicks team? Well, again, they don't have a Giannis. They don't have a Lillard. I get it. But will they be able to take over and kind of do what they've been doing and win a basketball game? Or will this be the game where, they get down and they're not able to come back, Nathan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. As you said, it's very in that type of tournament style, where everyone's trying a little bit harder, play up more closer to playoff style basketball. Having that ability to close down the stretch is huge, and that's just again, I mean, when you talk about teams that as finals contenders, I think that's one of the most important things is just winning close games and being good in the fourth quarter, being good when the game is tight, and that's something the Bucks had struggled with a little bit with Bud and Drew, where they just didn't have the offense to be good enough down the stretch. They sputtered a little bit. We saw it in the playoffs where they choked away leads in the fourth quarter. And, that's just not what a true championship team usually does. A true championship team usually is playing their best when it matters and playing their best late in games and in crunch time. And this is what this team does. Are the other three quarters pretty ugly? Yeah, most of the time they have been, at least defensively. I think they've been good offensively. But again, I'd rather be in a position where you trust your team late and you can figure out the first three quarters a little bit. And as long as you're close, you're in a pretty good position. As long as it's a game, you're in a pretty good position going into the fourth compared to, in years past where the first three quarters were always good. They were always comfortable in the regular season. They were always ahead. They never really got challenged a ton and didn't really have to put up with much adversity going throughout the season. And but you never trusted them to really hold on to leads or be great down the stretch, be great when it mattered. And that's just not a great feeling to have. Like, that's not what you want out of a championship team. So if I had to pick between those two, obviously you'd prefer to just be good all the time. You'd prefer to be good the first three quarters and be good in crunch time. But if I had to pick between one of those two things, I'd rather be good in crunch time. I'd rather be good when they're locked in because their defense also has been good in crunch time. They're the number 3 defensive team in the last 5 minutes of close games. So they've been picking it up on that end as well, which I don't think is a coincidence. I think they are trying harder, more bought in, and really locking down at that end of the court when the game gets tight and when it really matters, which is a good sign. Now you want to see that, again, translated over to the other quarters as well, but it's a good sign that it's not just their offense carrying them to victories at the end of games. Their defense is locking up too.
It is a Green Growing Podcast, live from the Toy Drive, 17th Annual Fan Toy Drive, along with 103.7 KISS FM, Blades Farm and Fleet in Oak Creek. One more day to donate coming up tomorrow, Friday, December 1st from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Come on down, make a donation at Farm and Fleet, or you can go online and donate at 1250 amthefan.com for Children's Wisconsin, and, of course, Robin's Nest, the foster care arm of Children's. For me, what you said right there is key, which is, do you look at their defense in the closeout of games, all of a sudden it becomes magically better. And that is why when a game is going on in the first half and you people are freaking out about what's happening in the first quarter or in the second quarter of a game, you're just, again, you're stressing for absolutely no reason whatsoever, because until we get to the final 5 minutes and we see whether or not this Bucks team can quote unquote turn it on or not, that's all that matters. Now, if we get to a point where they can't turn it on and they're not able to have any fight and Giannis and Lillard can't bail them out, game in and game out, all right, then we have more of a talking point going forward. But as long as these two continue to close out games between the two of them and the defense is improved, you can scream and yell about Adrian Griffin all you like, but as long as they continue to win games, that's all that's going to matter at the end of the day, Nathan.
Yeah, I mean, again, obviously I understand you want to see them you want to see the process overall looking better. You want to see them playing better. Like, I'm not going to say all season, well, it's only the first and second quarter, who cares? I understand being a little concerned. Like, they just don't come out and look good defensively, and they have to kind of pick it up at the end every game. I mean, I don't know. I think that there's valid concerns, and I mean, every game I've come out saying the same thing. I'm like, there's still valid concerns. I still think they probably need to make a trade for a defensive player. I wasn't super happy overall with what I saw, but I like that they won the game. I like that they looked good when it mattered. Dame and Giannis looked really good overall, and Chris has been looking pretty good. Like, I kind of come out of every game saying the same thing. It's like they're unpredictable kind of, but they're also very predictable at the same time. Like they're inconsistent, but they're consistently inconsistent in that that they're probably going to come out a little bit slow, not play very good in the first half. First three quarters, they'll get it down to a 5-point game or close game in the fourth, and then they'll win it. And so it's something that I haven't been shocked by any of how these games have played out, but you want to eventually see them taking care of business a little bit. Like, I hope tonight you're playing the Bulls, who are very much struggling right now. I'm hoping that this can be a game where they hold a steady lead throughout and they're not playing from, behind or playing a super close game and again have to pick it up at the end. But again, we have to look at, like, there's the people that just seem to focus on the negatives only. Everyone knows they're bad defensively. Like, we know that. But you also have to take into account the good things. You also have to say, yeah, they were bad defensively, but they still won the game, but they still came back at the end, but they still looked really good when it mattered. There's good, there's bad. Overall, I think it's just like, okay, they're at the beginning of the stages of this thing, and this isn't like it's, again, March, and the defense has been awful all season long, and we have months of data of this, that they're just a bad defense. Like, no, it's still been, a month of basketball, and they're looking good at the end of games. They're doing things that people wanted before. I talked about this last time. I was like, the same people that were asking for, they need to try things in the regular season and not be afraid to adjust and not be afraid to lose games and, maybe look a little bit worse in the regular season, but prepare yourself for the playoffs. It's like, that's what they're doing. I'm not saying they're purposely challenging themselves for the playoffs, but it's like they're getting all this stuff in and, having to come from behind and having to deal with close games and having to work out these defensive struggles in the regular season. And it's going to help them down the road. And that's what we kind of wanted. We didn't want them to just coast in the regular season and do the same thing they did under Bud. But when it happens, people freak out and people are like, why don't they look better? It's like, well, which do you want? Do you want them to coast and not be challenged and not face adversity and not be ready to win close games? Or do you want them to be able to do that stuff? Again, the obvious answer is you want a mix. You want to have some games you blow teams out, preferably, against the bad teams, you blow those teams out, and then you get in those close games against the good teams, and you're able to win close games against them. But again, it's not always going to work like that, especially early in the season with a new team. You can't ask for things to be perfect. There's been stuff I like, stuff I don't like, and I'm overall intrigued just by how good they look when it matters.
We'll take a quick time out. We'll come back on the other side here on Green and Growing and talk about that Boston Celtics and Indiana Pacers matchup. And we'll look at the Western side of this bracket as well and ask Nathan Marzion, are there any teams that he's seen so far that would concern him if the Bucks were to face one of these teams in this in-season tournament? Now, this is not, Nathan, do you think they'll lose to these guys in May or June? No, that's not the question. The question is, do you think they could lose? Because it's one game. These aren't a series of 3 or series of 5. It's one game. Do you think that they could get knocked out by one of the teams we're going to talk about in the East or the West? We'll do that coming up next year. Green and Growing. Don't forget, download it on your Odyssey app, or you download your favorite podcast app. And you can also check us out on our live stream usually as well at the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. And if you missed it, you can go back and watch the video that way. For some reason, you want to look at either one of us. I'm not quite sure why you would, but either way, if you want to check us out, feel free. Time out, and we'll be right back. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer, 1250 AM The Fan. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him at Nathan Marzion out here at the 17th Annual Fan Toy Drive along with 103.7 KISS FM, hustling for some toys and some cash donations for Children's Wisconsin and Robin's Nest, the foster care arm of Children's Wisconsin at Blaine's Farm and Fleet in Oak Creek on Rawson Avenue, just a couple minutes east of I-94. This bad boy wraps up here at 6 o'clock tonight on Thursday. And then we start over one more time on Friday. And again, it's 8 a.m. until 6 p.m. Tomorrow, the last day of the toy drive on Friday. And again, if you can't make it out, all you have to do is donate online at 1250 a.m. thefan.com. Again, 1250 a.m. thefan.com. All right, let's look at this in-season tournament bracket right now for the Milwaukee Bucks as we get ready. The other game Monday night is the Boston Celtics and the Indiana Pacers. Nathan Marzion, I will say that the Boston Celtics look fairly good at this point. I'm not going to sit here and try and act like they don't look fairly good. I think it's also fair to say they look better than the Milwaukee Bucks do at this point. But there is just something inside of me that says in a one-game knockout for the first real true test of who wins between these two teams, I still like the Bucks down the stretch of a game with Giannis and Lillard and the opportunity to close out more than I like Drew and Tatum and Jaylen Brown at this point. So I think I still roll Milwaukee if it ends up being Milwaukee and Boston in the semifinals. So that one I like. The Pacers, okay, fine. They're playing well. Am I bought in? No, I'm not bought in. I'm bought in on Boston being really good. I'm not there on Indiana, just like if Orlando was in the situation. I'm not there on Orlando either. But Indiana, nice squad, great coach in Carlisle. Big Rick Carlisle fan, wanted Milwaukee to hire him, not Bud. So I get down with Carlisle, but I still don't think they have enough to beat the Bucks necessarily in a one-game deal where the Bucks are trying. And by all accounts, it looks like the Bucks are trying in this in-season tournament thing. So I'm going to assume they're going to continue to try. So Bucks beat Indiana, and I think somehow or another, Giannis and Lillard figure out a way to beat Boston if we get to that point in the semifinals. Marzion, your thoughts on those two teams?
Yeah, both of those, I think, honestly, in my opinion, are tougher than. And again, this is assuming they get past the Knicks, but I think both of those Pacers and Celtics are tougher in my opinion, than the other teams in the West. I don't really like any of those teams in the West very much right now. At this point in the season, I'm kind of surprised those are the teams that got in, just because again they haven't been overly impressive. Like the Lakers haven't been super good, the Suns haven't been impressive yet, haven't even been healthy, and the Kings have been a little bit disappointing. The Pelicans have been meh. So, I mean, not saying those teams have no chance of beating the Bucks, but there's none of those that I'm like, oh my goodness, that team is loaded. Like if it was, again, Dallas with their offense that the Bucks almost lost to them already, or if it was the Nuggets that how good they are, like those type of teams definitely worry you more than the teams that got in. As far as Pacers Celtics, I think the Pacers scare me just because of that offense for this type of game. They're a younger team. They're probably going to get up even more for this game than the Bucks would, and that offense against our defense with their youth and their ability to run and get fast break points and all that stuff, it just isn't a perfect matchup for the Bucks. It's a pretty bad one. And so I wouldn't be surprised if the Pacers were able to beat us if they get there. And I don't think that's a terrible loss or anything. Like they're the number one offense in the NBA right now. And I know their defense sucks. Like we should be able to score on them as well. But like I just wouldn't be shocked if, that's a team that puts up 130 on us and you're just not quite able to match them. But I still would pick us in that game. I'm not overly confident. And then, as you said, Boston, they're better than us right now. They're right now the best team in the league, and so I would pick Boston against us. But again, as you said, I think if you're giving me a scenario where it's a 3-point game one way or the other, and there's 6-7 minutes left in a game against Boston, like at that point, I'd say I like the Bucks' chances. I like us over them in that scenario because we've been the best in the league in those scenarios, and we are the best closing team in the NBA. Whereas they have not been that. They have not been nearly as good in those situations. So, yeah, I think overall I take Boston, but Bucks could easily win that. Same with in an opposite for the other game, I overall would take the Bucks over the Pacers, but I could also see the Pacers winning.
I got a question to you before I talk about the Western Conference teams in the in-season tournament. What do you think is more sustainable? The Bucks continue to be the best clutch team in the NBA or a top 3, right? But throughout the entire season, or do you think it's more sustainable that Giannis and Lillard are both going to average 30 or more a night for the rest of the season?
I think the clutch time stuff is more sustainable because I think they just go to stuff that works consistently in the clutch. And I wish they would do it more throughout the game. The Dame Giannis pick and roll, the Chris Giannis pick and roll, the Chris Brook pick and roll, whatever it is. just using, going to the ball handlers that they really need to all the time rather than just like 80% of the time. And so I really do believe that, like, I mean, I think that that's pretty sustainable. I don't think they'll be maybe at the same level all season long of just they win every single close game. They're going to lose some of them, but I think that's more sustainable than relying on, Giannis and Dame to always be putting up 30. I think at the end of the day, they're probably both going to be close to that number, but I think there will be games where Dame doesn't have it. There will be games where Giannis doesn't have it, or the other just one of them just lets the other kind of cook for a night if that one's on and they're not. So I trust the crunch time offense to continue more than that, just because I know kind of whenever that situation comes up, I really do trust that they're going to deliver. I don't always trust going into every game that, oh, Giannis and Dame are both going to score 30.
All right, let's talk about the Western Conference. Nathan alluded to it earlier. Pelicans at Kings Monday night. That's a 9 o'clock tip on TNT. And then the game on Tuesday night after Bucks Knicks on TNT will be Suns at the Lakers. Of those four teams, Pelicans have been playing well. Again, how long will Zion Williamson stay healthy? That's the question. And that's going to determine how far, they go in the playoffs. But right now he is healthy. He is playing well. So you're going to have to deal with Zion Williamson. The Kings are the Kings. All right. They're going to score a bunch of points and hope they can outscore you because their defense still isn't anything to write home about. They have no shot blocker in the middle. So that's going to present big time problems when they face the Bucks as far as dealing with Giannis getting to the rim. And then Suns and Lakers. Suns, like the Bucks, unfinished product. They've had a problem staying healthy and keeping Booker, Durant, and Beal all on the floor at the same time. That's been a big issue for them. Lakers, okay. I mean, LeBron, Anthony Davis, fine. It is what it is. But again, what are they going to look like? I tend to agree with you. I don't know if any of those teams necessarily concern me. I think of those four teams, the one team that would probably concern me the most in a championship matchup would be the Kings, because that's the one team that's capable of shooting 60% from three and just beating you because they just get unconscious from three. Malik Monk hits 7 threes and they get going. And then all of a sudden you can't keep up. So of those, I think that would concern me the most. I don't worry necessarily about the Lakers. We talked about the Suns. They just haven't been able to put all those guys together health-wise. They won't be able to by Tuesday either, probably. Pelicans, maybe, but there's just not a lot of playoff experience there or big game experience for the Pelicans. So I tend to lean Milwaukee in that situation because these guys have all, well, maybe not Lillard, but Lillard's been in playoff games. I mean, they've been in these big situations, these big games. So I don't think they really get fazed by it necessarily one way or the other. And if we're talking about a championship scenario, it's in Vegas. So there will be a completely different atmosphere than if you're in Milwaukee or if you're in Sacramento. It's a neutral floor. And I think when we talk about a neutral floor, that probably benefits the veteran team, would be my guess, kind of looking at this thing, Nathan.
Yeah, and looking at these teams, I mean, the highest defensive rating of any of them is ninth for the Lakers, and the highest offensive rating is sixth for the Suns. So, I mean, none of them are top five in offense or defense. And again, there's two of them. Lakers and Pelicans are slightly above average defensively. Suns and Kings are slightly below average defensively so far this season, and then offensively, the Suns and Kings are above average, and the Pelicans and Lakers are below average. I mean, the Lakers are 24th or something like right now. Yeah, 24th in offensive rating. So there's, like, looking at the numbers and looking just at like the offense and the defense. There's none of these teams, again, like, freak me out or anything. I think maybe I would just say the Suns having the number 6 offense is like, okay, that could be tough to stop with how our defense looks right now. I don't trust any of these teams to really contain the Bucks' offense. I think we're going to be putting up points in this, again, just if we played any of these teams in the championship, I think we'd be fine offensively. The only team that I think I trust to keep up with us is the Suns, because they have, assuming Booker and KD play in that game, and they've looked good offensively so far this season. So I would trust them with how they've looked to keep up with us in a game like that, and in a shootout type of game. I don't really trust the other teams to do that. Maybe the Kings, but and again, maybe the Kings with their youth and stuff get up for the game a little bit more, even more than the other teams do, and are able to play a little bit better. But I don't know. The one team that might be one that I'm like, okay, I don't feel quite as good would be the Suns.
All right, let's talk a little bit coming up next as far as what we thought this in-season tournament was going to be versus what it ended up turning out to be. We'll take a quick break, come back, do that on the other side. It is a Green and Growing podcast. Download it on your Odyssey app or download your favorite podcast app. Check us out on the Odyssey Sports YouTube page. All of that and more. Coming up next here on Green and Growing, live from the Toy Drive. Hey, it's Sparky Fifer. Follow me on Twitter at Sparky Radio. Check us out at 1250amthefan.com. He is Nathan Marzion. Follow him at Nathan Marzion. Talking about the in-season tournament here on Green and Growing. And let's get into talking about, kind of what we thought this thing was going to be versus what it ended up being at the end of the day as we broadcast from the Toy Drive at Blaine's Farm and Fleet in Oak Creek. Friday is the last day, December 1st from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. If you want to donate a toy, make a cash donation to Children's Wisconsin or Robin's Nest, you can feel free to do that. Also, you can donate online at 1250amthefan.com. This is what I'll say about the tournament. I thought it was a joke. I wasn't buying into it at all, and I didn't think one way or the other I'd really care. I still don't really care one way or the other, but I will say this. I am pleasantly surprised and happy by the intensity level of these NBA teams in these games. It tells me that they're taking it semi-seriously. And you go back to what Lillard said about, it's not about the superstars. It's about the guys on the end of the bench getting that $500,000 if you win it. And that can be life-changing money for guys, that the 11th, 12th guy on the end of the bench. And that's why, him and Giannis are trying to play hard and try to win this thing for those guys. So from that aspect, I think if you're the NBA, you're ecstatic because you're getting what you want. Instead of guys going through the motions and horrible defense and everything else, you're getting some intensity. And from that standpoint, it's a success. The court thing, stupid. Didn't like it then, still don't like it. Every time I see a court, that Miami Heat court, didn't like that one either. So I'm not a fan of the courts necessarily. The jerseys that they're wearing, some of them are wearing their city jerseys or whatever else, I guess. I would assume in the years to come, we'll have in-season tournament jerseys that'll be separate from all the other jerseys to make Nathan Marzion's head spin more about all these different jerseys that we have to watch year in and year out. So I think that's coming too. And I also think, I'll make this projection, there's going to be a rule change in these games separate from the regular NBA games. They're going to use the in-season tournament to mess with rule changes that they may want to imply or apply during the NBA season. So whether that be a 4-point line or something along those lines, because if they're doing custom courts, they can do a 4-point line if they want a 4-point line. They can do different things like that and experiment and see how it goes and see how fans like it kind of going forward. So I think that's coming at some point in the future too, where you're going to see experiments during the in-season tournament with rules to see how people like it, how players like it going forward. Nathan Marzion, you found yourself liking the NBA in-season tournament more than you thought you would?
For me, I think it's been about the same. I mean, I had not crazy high expectations for it, but I was like, I don't think this can hurt. I think it's cool. I think it adds a little bit of juice to the games. Again, I was like, I don't think anyone should hate this because why? Like, it can only help. It can't make things worse. It can't make the games less exciting. So that was kind of my take on it, and that's how I've seen it. Like, yeah, there's a slightly bigger intensity level in these games, and it hasn't hurt the regular season. I don't think it's added a ton to it. I don't think, I haven't been really like, paying attention to the in-season tournament standings or like really caring that much about it. Now, I think I'll care more when it gets to like Vegas and stuff and you get some of these games, these good games at the end of this thing. Yeah, then it'll be a little bit more fun. But so far, it's just been like, okay, it adds a little bit more incentive. But, I haven't been like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. So for me, it's been about the same. And, I think, yeah, it has added that intensity level, made these games a little bit more competitive. But at the same time, I don't know if these games were competitive. A lot of them ended up being good games. I don't think that's because of the in-season tournament as much as it is just like they happen to be good games. They happen to be close games. Because it's not like we didn't see close regular season games before this. It's not like only the in-season tournament games are close, hard-fought games. It's like, I don't know. I think it adds a little bit. It's something that can only help. And so I'm fine with it. I'm still fine with it. I'm not like, I don't love it. I don't dislike it. I think it's just fine.
All right, very good. I think might try to do a post game on Tuesday night after Bucks Knicks, maybe. I don't know Marzion's plans. I just came up with this on the fly. So if we do that, then we won't record on Monday night the podcast. We'll just do a post-game podcast on Tuesday after Bucks and Knicks in-game season tournament. Nathan Marzion, thank you so much. Enjoy your weekend. I'm Steve Sparky Fifer. Thanks for tuning in to Green and Growing. And remember, last day of the toy drive, Friday, December 1st, Plains Farm and Fleet in Oak Creek, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Or you can always donate online at 1250 a.m. thefan.com for Children's Wisconsin and Robin's Nest. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Wait.
What?
Go Marquette.
Go Marquette. Why? They play
on Saturday. They play Wisconsin. Big game.
Oh, yeah, that is a big game. And I'm out here at the toy drive, so I'm completely not tuned into anything whatsoever. Like normally we record these on Thursday nights. I told Nathan, I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay awake for that whole Bucks game. I'm probably going to fall asleep. So we're going to have to record this earlier before the Bucks Bulls game. So yes, Marquette, Wisconsin on Saturday. I'll definitely be watching that one. All right, have a good one. Toodles.